It's me, Mario!
Super Mario 64 has a strange dichotomy in terms of 3D Mario games. The level design on show here is fantastic, and some of the best the series has to offer. But at the same time, the controls have aged poorly, and even when I played this game as a child, the controls didn't feel as precise as they should be. And that's why I'm so conflicted on Mario 64's quality and status in terms of the other 3D Mario game. The design has not been surpassed by any of the other 3D Mario games in my opinion, and I think it's arguably at its weakest point in Super Mario Odyssey. But the controls have seen an inverse trajectory. They're at their weakest point in 64, and at their peak in Super Mario Odyssey. The level design is so superb because it instills questions into the player's mind. Questions like, what's on top of that mountain? Or, why is that chain chomp there? Or, how can I get in that cage? When Mario 64 presents these questions and provides satisfying answers to them, that's when the game is at its peak, because the designers are able to express their creativity and engage players in these creative worlds. But just because the level design is superb doesn't mean I think it's masterful. There are some flaws in the game's approach. Specifically, later worlds don't really build on preceding concepts as much as desired. There are a few instances of this, but they're the exception, not the rule. Most worlds instead revolve around a central gimmick that's unique to said world, which is by no means a bad approach. But because there are instances where the designers develop concepts from previous stages, the attempt should have been more successful, or at least more present in the final release. Moreover, as someone who played this game as a child, the limitations of the N64 still hinder Mario 64 from becoming masterful in my opinion. The largest grievance here is the controller, and no, I did not emulate this game. I used an original N64 controller on an actual N64 with an actual copy of Super Mario 64. So all of my grievances with the controls stem from how someone would experience this game back in 1996. I'm not taking the control scheme out of its context, because I would be doing a disservice if I critiqued the controls of a platformer with an incompatible controller to the one for the N64, since no controller has quite been able to match its ergonomic design, or lack thereof. I want to make that all clear because what I say about the controls next is not to slander the game or misconstrue it as some failure of a platformer, because it really isn't. Side note, all of the footage I've gathered will probably look worse than what you've been seeing online, because I recorded all of it in August, before there was the announcement of the 3D Mario All-Stars collection, so it's some unfortunate timing on my part. The general movement of Mario is fantastic. It all strings together wonderfully. Each move has its own situational uses, so no technique is pointless or unworthy of its place in Mario's moveset. The N64 controller, however, is its own beast entirely, and mine is not immune to its own flaws. With time, my controller's main stick has become loose, so there are times where if you move the stick slightly, there will be no registered input. The other problem with this stick, not unique to my own controller, is the texture for the control stick. It's hard plastic. After long play sessions, your thumbs are tired, and while I don't think this is a problem for everyone, my fingers will often slip off the controller, which is basically a crime for platformers focused on movement. But if that's just something that happens to me, then this isn't the fault of the controller. The reason I'm so harsh on this controller is because a platformer's design and controller are inseparable from one another. Platformers require the controller to be consistent and responsive because otherwise the game is frustrating and unfair. And with Mario 64's focus on freedom and player choice in the platforming realm, responsive, intuitive controls are a necessity. Now, I'm not attempting to blame specific designers or engineers at Nintendo for the flaws of the N64 controller, but I think it's important to judge the controller and how well it integrates with Mario 64, which is to say that it barely does. The controller fuses with Super Mario 64 in the most bare bones way possible. The jump button functions, and Mario sure does a jump. If you press B, then Mario sure does a kick. Moving the stick sure does make Mario move around. The C button sure do change the camera, and the Z button does indeed make Mario crouch. But only 3 out of the 5 items I mentioned are responsive and intuitive. The A and B buttons are close enough to the right hand that it's natural to press them. The last one is the Z button because your index finger naturally rests there and it's pretty responsive. Actually, that's something I haven't quite discussed yet. So if you don't know, you hold an N64 controller like this. You put your left hand on the middle prong of the controller, pressing your thumb on the control stick and your index finger on the Z button. Then you take your right hand and hold the right prong using your index finger to press the R button, while your thumb covers the A, B, and C buttons. Not many people can look at an N64 controller and instinctively know how to hold it properly, so I thought this was important. And that complexity of the controller's layout is surprisingly not its weakness, but how the game handles the remaining controls I mentioned. The C buttons are the most egregious example because of how frustrating and uncooperative the camera is. Lakitu acts as the cameraman for the entire journey, and while I know he's supposed to help introduce unfamiliar audiences with 3D camera movement, and I know that it was revolutionary at the time, but Lakitu's refusal to go through walls is the worst part of the camera system. Implementing Lakitu in this manner is a fine idea, and I appreciate what it accomplished back in 1996, but the restrictive camera isn't responsive, and it leads to a lack of player control, which is against one of the core tenets of Mario 64, freedom. I'll explain more of how the game utilizes freedom in the level design section, but it can be seen in Mario's movement options as well. Techniques like the long jump and side flip have multiple uses. For the long jump, it can act as a way to cross a long gap, build momentum, or jump into a tight space. The side flip can guide you into a wall, get Mario up to a high elevation, or act as an evasive maneuver around enemies. These two moves have more uses than the ones I highlighted, but the variety in their applications is what gives the moveset of Mario a degree of freedom, considering that all platformers up to that point had relied on linearity and more limited moveset options. So when the camera is restrictive and prevents you from having that freedom, I think it's a failure on the game's behalf. And what brings down the controls even further is the control stick itself. While the problems with the C buttons are more game-oriented, my problems with the movement are more controller-oriented. The actual stick itself is problematic to use because it's an inferior transitional iteration of the design for the GameCube control stick. It has the same elevated circles on the top that act as a grip for your finger, but it's a complete improvement on the stick. The material is easier to use for any extended period of time, and it has a better, easier to control range of input, all of which are qualities that the N64 iteration lacks. And it's unfortunately a great hindrance on my enjoyment for Super Mario 64, because its freedom and design hinges upon the quality of its movement. While I don't think the controls are anything special, the worlds you travel through certainly are.
Here we go!
The level design of Super Mario 64 is impressive, and even more so since it holds up still to this day. The best aspect of the level design is the questions I mentioned before because they generate discovery and exploration. All of the following examples I mentioned will not encompass everyone's experience, because I can't speak for those, but I can speak for myself. In Wet Dry World, there's this pillar of chains in one of the corners of the map. When I first arrived in this world, I thought, why is that pillar there? I kept that question in my mind while I collected a few stars. Once I found the Bob-omb buddy to unlock the cannon though, I had an idea. I could try entering that pillar of chains. So I hopped in the cannon, and after a few attempts, I made it into the pillar, discovering a new underground city with more stars to collect. That story I had demonstrates how Mario 64's level design accomplishes two goals. First, the level generated a question that maintained my interest as I continued to explore it. And second, the level provided a satisfying reward for my curiosity. I consider the new area to explore as a satisfying reward because the game provides tangible main objectives for you to accomplish. And if I wasn't curious to explore, I would have missed this wonderful reward, which isn't a bad design choice. There are a plethora of main objectives to choose from, so blocking off certain main objectives through curiosity and exploration is actually a wonderful design choice. Power stars are so frequent throughout all of the castle that when a painting prevents a player from instantly accessing certain stars, I think that's okay. It doesn't significantly halt progression, it isn't an annoyance on gameplay, and the pacing is still intact with this somewhat halted progression system. But Wet Dry World isn't the only course that exhibits these same qualities. Stages like Bob-omb Battlefield, Lethal Lava Land, and Tiny Huge Island also allow players to be curious and experiment. Bob-omb Battlefield has two prominent questions in my experience. Once on top of that mountain, and why is a chain chomp here, aka what the hell is that thing? That first question is the easier one to answer because the game's very first objective involves what's on the summit, even guiding the player there with an explicit hint before entering the stage. It's simple, but the objective still engages that curiosity, priming the player to experiment with every aspect of the stage. And even with that explicit hint, when I played this game as a child, I still never went to the mountain because the game told me so. I thought, oh, what's on the mountain? Well, of course, I thought that after exploring the level a little bit, but the question still stands. The second one, involving the chain chomp, is the far more interesting and complex question. The chain chomp is far larger than any other enemy on the map, and it was a striking image for me even when I was a kid. The strange nature of its presence acts as one clue toward the hidden star, but the other clue is the visible placement of the star in the cage. Its proximity to the chain chomp hints at the key to unlocking the gate, since both the star and enemy are trapped. It's a somewhat difficult solution to figure out, but once I discovered the secret, I was thrilled. I was rewarded for ground pounding the pole and thereby experimenting with the environment. Because the reward for this experimentation was part of the main objective, it was a satisfying, worthwhile answer to my question. This same structure repeats itself in Lethal Lava Land, to the same wonderful effect. The question I found here is this: why is there a volcano? Granted, the secret of the volcano is more hidden than the ones in Bob-omb Battlefield. There aren't any explicit hints at first that the volcano has an explorable interior. In fact, the volcano occasionally spits fire, implying that it's dangerous. But because the game had prodded my curious mind before this point, I still took the plunge and found yet another reward. In Tiny Huge Island, I asked, why is there a cracked roof at the top of this mountain? In Womp's Fortress, I asked, how can I get into that cage with the star? At Jolly Rogers Bay, I wondered, why is there a giant eel? In Cool Cool Mountain, I wondered, why is there a house here? When I found Big Boo's haunt, I thought to myself, why is there a shack in the courtyard? For Dire Dire Docks, I asked myself, how can I get into that cage with the star? Inside Tick-Tock Clock, I wondered, why do these platforms spin in different directions? In Hazy Maze Cave, I asked, why the hell is there a dinosaur here? On Tall Tall Mountain, I thought, why is there a monkey here? In Snowman's Land, I saw an igloo and thought to myself, can I go inside it? In Shifting Sandland, I asked, how can I get inside that pyramid? And for Rainbow Ride, I asked myself, why is there a star away from the magic carpet? And the castle shares some of these secrets too. For instance, in one of the rooms, I asked myself, why are there several paintings of Princess Peach? Each world in Super Mario 64 presents these types of questions, the ones that spring from curiosity and a desire to explore. And what's so amazing is that the game is able to capitalize on these mysteries effectively. And I think it's because these mysteries are the main objective of the game. You have to solve some of these mysteries to collect enough stars to finish the game and fight Bowser. And what's even better about these mysteries is that they present ever-evolving worlds that change as you play through the game. While not anything major, most of the worlds in Super Mario 64 change as you collect more and more stars, and it creates a better sense of immersion and progress. The smallest but funniest instance of this is in Bob-omb Battlefield. The first mission wants you to climb to the summit and take down King Bob-omb, for which you earn a power star. The key detail here is that there are 2 large balls in a pit when you try to climb the mountain. Once you return to the stage though, there are now 3 large balls which all look curiously similar to the shape and color of a certain large Bob-omb. This example is quite morbid, but it does provide that small but necessary sense of accomplishment and immersion. Since King Bob-omb's corpse appears in subsequent missions, it illustrates how your actions have real consequences on all of the worlds you explore. Another similar world change happens in Womp's Fortress. To collect the first power star, you have to kill the Womp King on top of the fortress, and upon subsequent visits, there's a stone tower where his remains once stood, providing the same sense of progression and change as the example with King Bob-omb. A better, less morbid instance of this is on Cool Cool Mountain though. The first mission tasks you with returning a baby penguin to its parent. The typical path involves picking up the baby penguin and sliding down the mountain to reach the baby's parent. But there are, like always, several wonderful approaches to this. Once you give the baby back though, you can find the parent penguin inside the cabin on top of the mountain, which allows you to race the penguin down to the bottom of the slide for a chance of receiving another power star. Here, Mario is beginning to interact with characters, and his interactions with those characters unlock new rewards and objectives. While interacting with NPCs like the toads in the castle can be a decent side objective, what makes this small bit of progression so rewarding is that it's part of the main objective for the game, collecting power stars. While all of these details may seem small, it enhances the feeling of accomplishment from collecting power stars, which is something I can't quite say for the boot out system.
Game over!
The boot out system is what happens each time you collect a star. You're booted out of the level back to Peach's castle. This system is infuriating, and while it's not as problematic as the controls, I think it's quite worthy of critique because of how it hinders the pacing of the game, not the actual time it wastes. Let's take a look though at how much time this actually wastes, because it's far less than I think most people actually think it is. The following footage is how long it would normally take someone to return to a course after collecting a single star. Now, that clip took 11 seconds, but I'm going to round down to 10 seconds for the sake of calculations and giving the game the benefit of the doubt, because there are also load times to consider that I don't think I should fault the game itself for. With that time, the game boots you out of a level for 6 of the 7 available stars. That means each stage wastes about 1 minute of time in total. Multiplying that by the 15 stages in the game gives us a total of 15 minutes of wasted time, which is surprisingly not a lot. I wish the game didn't have that wasted time altogether, but I think that's more because the time isn't the problematic part here. It's the pacing. Exploring a world in Super Mario 64 is frustrating, because once you complete any objective, you have to leave the level. There is no choice as to what you want to do, because I think that option would be a welcome addition to the game. But the pacing of exploration comes to a complete halt with the current boot-out system. You can't continue your trek through these wonderful worlds, you can't continue experimenting with the game's systems, and you can't go back to find anything you noticed along the way. Any progress or sense of accomplishment that you just had completely stops. It's one of the major faults for the design of the game, and it's so hard to ignore or brush off as a nitpick when it comes up so frequently. Plus, it halts what I consider one of the greatest strengths of Super Mario 64, experimentation. The movement mechanics and objective design encourage you to experiment with Mario, trying to find new areas and new ways to reach said areas. It's a wonderful system, and I think staying in the level after completing an objective enhances that design. Hell, there's already a system like this in place with the 100 coin stars. If the 100 coin stars didn't exist, I think I would probably pass these problems off as a limitation of the N64. It was the first 3D gaming console Nintendo made, after all, so it was bound to have technical limitations. Limitations which are quite apparent if you delve into Ocarina of Time's frame rate in any capacity. Allowing you to collect 1 star at a time would have been a reasonable compromise so that the game's performance wouldn't suffer while still providing a worthwhile experience. Except, the 100 coin stars completely override that mindset. They don't kick you out of the level, and they only spawn in once you've collected 100 coins. They even appear above Mario's last location where he collected the 100th coin. It's one of the most technically complicated stars since it doesn't have a set location, and it doesn't even spawn in before Mario collects the right amount of coins. On top of that though, the star even allows you to save inside the level, meaning that the N64 had no problems creating a save file inside of a course. Most likely because the game only needs to save your star count since you always start at the same location. Why then does the game boot you out for all of the other objectives? It's clearly not a technical limitation, and it severely hinders the exploration of each world. The only reason I can find is for the stars that change something about the world, like defeating King Bob-omb or Womp King. The justification here would be that the N64 needs the player to leave the level in order to load in the changes. And if that is the case, a compromise would be booting out the player only for those stars. It wastes far less time, and the pacing isn't segmented as much as it already is. Now, I haven't been referring to the instances in which you die for the boot-out system, though there is a specific instance of those which I despise. That one exception being bottomless pits. Bottomless pits become more prevalent as you progress through the courses in Mario 64. In the first set of courses, there are only 2 stages that have bottomless pits, Cool Cool Mountain and Womp's Fortress. The game builds up these bottomless pits, having more and more instances as you reach the further levels of the castle. The bottom floor, the next portion of the castle, curiously only features 1 stage with bottomless pits, Hazy Maze Cave. The third stage of courses has 2 egregious stages, which include Tall Tall Mountain and Tiny Huge Island. And the final 2 stages have some quite punishing bottomless pits in Tick-Tock Clock and Rainbow Ride. These bottomless pits annoy me so much because it completely ruins the pacing of the level. Now, I'm not advocating for a version of Super Mario 64 without punishments for failing platforming challenges, because in that case there would be absolutely no challenge to the game and a different problem would exist entirely. The bottomless pits, as they are now, exist as a way to reward skilled players and provide an incentive to better your own platforming skills. But the problem is, this style of punishment is far too hard. harsh, and it doesn't necessarily benefit the difficulty because of how harshly it combines with the archaic lives system. So if you try attempting a course like Rainbow Ride, where a platforming mistake is very likely to cost you an entire life and boot you out of a level, you're risking something quite valuable: your time. The live system is so archaic because it simply boots you to the outside of the castle. In this current system, the only punishment you receive for running out of lives is wasted time. It doesn't seem like a fair punishment, and it leads to frequent frustration, or at least it did for me. What surprises me is that there's already a fitting system in the game that balances punishment and time. It's the lava. If you land in the lava, you receive a massive 1/3 hit to your health. That is a hefty but well-deserved punishment. The platforms in a course like Lethal Lava Land are wide enough that when I fall into the lava, I thought it was a fair punishment. And on top of being fair, it doesn't waste my time. I can immediately continue exploring the level, so the pacing is still intact. I think a system akin to this would have worked better for bottomless pits. If you fell into the void, a friendly Lakitu would grab Mario and take away a large amount of your health, just like the lava. This avoids wasting the player's time because they don't lose lives as quickly, though I'd personally prefer a version without the live system, and it keeps Mario in a level, so the pacing of exploration isn't fragmented. And whenever someone wanted to leave a level, there would always be the option after collecting a star to either leave the course or stay in the course. And even after that, there's the pause menu with the option to exit said course. Having another friendly Lakitu follow Mario isn't that far-fetched either in terms of the story. The camera Lakitu says that they're reporting what happens with Mario live to a news station. So having other news team Lakitus would actually fit the minimal story in Super Mario 64. But I don't think any of these problems are ill will. It's a problem of age. Live systems were so common in the gaming industry prior to 1996 that removing them from a Mario game would probably seem like blasphemy. I can't prove any of that though, because it's all just conjecture on my part, but it's something that prevents me from saying that all of my wasted time makes this game bad. I think the main thing that prevents Mario 64 from being amazing to me is time. Time has not been good to this game. It's beaten Mario 64 down time and time again as newer Mario games release. Games without the boot out system and the lives system. The passage of time has been cruel to Super Mario 64, and depending on what you think about the game, it may have also infected the objective design. To me though, it hasn't.
So long, Bowser!
The objective design is what truly reinforces that core design choice of freedom. Super Mario 64 is vastly different from the preceding 2D Mario games. Those games featured linear objectives requiring you to start at point A and reach point B, which is by no means bad design. It provides an easy way for designers to create meaningful, progressively difficult challenges for the player to beat. It's a great formula, but what I love about Mario 64 is that it botched that trend while being the first ever 3D Mario game. The goal of Super Mario 64 is to collect enough power stars to progress through Peach's castle. You have a limited choice though of what courses to play and what stars to collect. There is some semblance of a linear order, but that little bit of choice is what plants the seeds for Mario 64's core, freedom. This game is based around providing freedom to the player in every facet, but I think the objective design is a fantastic way to illustrate that, especially as a contrast to the 2D Mario games. The Mario games prior to this one included the first 3 Super Mario Bros. Games, as well as Super Mario World and Yoshi's Island. They all share the same objective design as the original Super Mario Bros. For the NES. Reach the flagpole or some version of that. It was a relatively straight line from the left side of the screen to the farthest right point possible. There's some variations in the path though, including warp pipes and climbing on top of the screen sometimes. Mind you, this linear progression is nowhere close to bad design. The conveyance on display for these games is fantastic, and it's one of the most praiseworthy elements for this type of design. The games convey who the enemies are, what questions blocks do, what power-ups are, and a plethora of other mechanics at work without a single tutorial. It's some impressive design, especially when considering the limited memory on NES cartridges, so it seems like a brilliant design choice that came more out of necessity than anything else. Super Mario 64, by contrast, doesn't have these reach the flagpole objectives, except for when it does. And the game features the text explanations that the more linear Mario games lacked. which is a fine way to communicate to the player what the controls are. The earlier Mario games had simplified controls, so they didn't need the text box explanations. But with the more complicated moveset, one that was quite foreign to audiences back in 1996, I think implementing text to explain mechanics is a decent and acceptable way for the designers to convey that pertinent information. And now with the flagpole objectives gone, you can now choose which missions or objectives you want to complete, which is where the idea of freedom comes in. You're free to choose what you want to do. The game structure is almost disconnected in a way. Finish 8 levels and then you can progress the story. Complete 30 levels and you can continue the main story. Complete 70 levels and you can see the game's ending. In that sense, 1 star is equivalent to 1 level in a previous Mario game. This isn't an absolute rule though, since there are clearly some stars that aren't as long as 1 level and some that require more than finishing 1 level. But the idea still stands. Completing levels and collecting stars is the main goal of the game, but it's not the same as progressing the main story. But what I think is so fascinating about Mario 64 is that its minimal story creates the cohesion between the figurative levels and the main story. Bowser created all of the paintings you explore, so conquering these worlds is still involved in the main story, but it's all a loose connection, which I absolutely love because it allows for the freedom of choice in the game. You're free to choose which courses to complete. You're free to collect as many power stars as you want. You're free to explore the castle for secrets or completely ignore it altogether. The only thing the game asks of you is to play a certain amount of content, not what content you have to play. And that's the key difference for this iteration of Mario. You have a say in what you do and accomplish. It's such a liberating take on Mario that I find it hard to play the linear, course-clear Mario games after playing this one. But while the general objective design is so liberating, the designers did repeat some objectives too often for my liking. For example, the red coin challenge is in every single course, and it becomes tiresome after a few attempts. But the plethora of other objectives are so creative and unique that I can't help but love this game. It's what makes this game so refreshing to play even all these years later. At the beginning of making this, I honestly wasn't sure what I thought of Mario 64, but now I think I'm more certain than ever. This is my favorite iteration of 3D Mario. It's so creative and unique, and it beckons your curiosity in a way I think very few games have been able to match. I wouldn't say that it's masterful, but Super Mario 64 is a damn good game. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. I know it's been an incredibly long time, since about March. All that time I've been working on the long Xenoblade video, thinking that it would come out in time, but it clearly has not. That video is about 150 pages for the script, and then I have fully completed about 30 minutes of the editing process, which you can check out in a playlist that I will keep updating as I finish the video in the link in the description below. I really appreciate your patience with this, and I just thought I would drop this kind of, surprise video as a way of saying, yes, I'm back, and there will be content. My current plan is to release 1 video every month at the very least, but it's going to be some of these longer videos like this. So I'm assuming the minimum is going to be about 30 minutes. And that's not me trying to reach like some specific goal or something. That's just how I've been writing these videos recently. Ever since the Xenoblade video, I write more about whatever I'm talking about. So that's just how it's going to be from now on. There are currently a few videos in the works after this, and any of them could release next month. The 3 I'm working on are a Super Mario Sunshine critique, a Shadow of the Colossus critique, and the long Xenoblade video. And I say it's very long because 150 pages translates to about 5 hours in video length. I appreciate your patience with all of that, and there will be at least 1 video next month. Could be the Xenoblade video, could be the Shadow of the Colossus video, could be Super Mario Sunshine. It's just whatever happens. If you want to receive more updates, you can follow me at Cinnacal on Twitter. I usually post updates about the Xenoblade video there, and since this one was a surprise, I didn't post it there, but for future videos like Sunshine or Shadow of the Colossus, I will talk about it. Don't worry. There will also be a link in the description to my Twitter account if you just want to click on that. And yeah, that should be everything. Thank you so much again for your patience with all this and for watching this video. I know it's been a really long time, but I think I'm back in the swing of things. Anyway, I may be cynical, but I wish you the very best.